over some tips on how to develop a strong research question, which you are going to use when you are doing some research about the Native American tribe that you chose. So we'll kind of just go through this together, and then you'll be able to edit the PDF on your own according to your Native Americans. So you'll notice it says, when doing research, it is very important to write very clear research questions. Here we will step through the process of writing and selecting questions for your project. So on your PDF, you're going to start by filling in this blank with what is your research topic. So in this case, my research topic that I'm interested in is smartphones. So I'm going to add that to this line. Then it asks, what civilization or civilizations will you cover? So it kind of wants you to be thinking about what group of people does your research topic affect? And I'm specifically interested in how have smartphones affected teenagers in the 21st century. Right, so then we're going to go through and look at some of these basic short answer questions. Those are going to be your who, what, when, and where questions, and those can typically be answered with shorter answers, and they're not really considered research questions. They're important to our research, but they're mostly used to kind of provide some of that background information. These are questions that you would probably just be able to Google and find the answers to those questions, as opposed to kind of having to dig deep and do some of your own research and inferencing and kind of putting the pieces together. So once you have your Native American tribe that you're researching, you are going to come up with 2 questions for each of the who, what, when, where, and why questions. So I'm going to come up with some examples that you might hopefully help you come up with some of your own. So for a who question, one of my who questions is going to be, who invented the first smartphone? And my second who question is going to be, who uses the iPhone, or just a smartphone? Who uses the average smartphone the most in a typical week? And by that, I'm kind of wondering, like, what age group? Do we think it's teenagers? Do we think it's more like adults, older people? Who uses the average smartphone the most in a typical week is what I'm wondering. Now I'm going to go down to what questions, and one of my what questions that I have prepared is, what is a benefit of owning a smartphone? And another what question I have is, what is the average age of a smartphone user? Now I'm going to go down to my when questions and come up with 2 when questions about smartphones. So my first when question is, when was the first smartphone invented? And my second when question is, when did smartphones start to gain popularity? Right, and then next, the last kind of basic research questions is our where question. So I'm going to ask, where are smartphones most widely used? And my second question is, where was the first smartphone invented? So you'll notice that for most of these questions, they're simple enough that you could probably just type these questions into Google and some type of article or website would pop up that would give you this information like that. So that's why we kind of call these our basic short answer questions. These are not what we would use or what we would consider a strong research question. We can kind of help them to get us thinking about what we really want to research. So when we scroll down, we're going to look at this next part that says, research questions deal with big ideas, changes over time, different points of view, ethical issues, etc. They typically deal with how and why questions, as well as a combination of those. So for your chosen topic, mine was smartphones, I want you to come up with 2 of how questions and 2 why questions. So my first how question was, how can smartphones affect users younger than 18? Because I'm kind of specifically wondering about teenagers, children that have smartphones and what effect it has on them. And then my second how question was, how has the way that smartphones are used changed over time? Okay, so those are my 2 how questions, and now I'm going to do my 2 why questions. So one of my why questions is, why can smartphones be bad for your mental health? And my second why question is, why is the combination of smartphones and social media addicting? So these questions are a little bit like meatier questions, meaning you might not just be able to Google it and find the exact answer. You might kind of have to put together research and form your own research about those questions. So now, after you've come up with those 4 total questions, 2 how questions, 2 why questions, you're going to formulate your own research question by reading through all of the questions that you've come up with and seeing if there is one or a combination of a few of them that you are really interested in and that you want to continue to research further. And you're going to type your final question right here. So I have talked about one of my questions that I was interested in is smartphones being bad for your mental health, because I think that there's been a lot more research done recently about how using smartphones can kind of have a negative impact on your mental health. And then I'm also wondering about how smartphones and social media together affect your mental health. And then I said all the way at the top that I was specifically interested in teenagers. So I'm going to kind of combine 3 things to come up with one research question that I want to research. So my final question that I have is, what is the effect of having a smartphone and social media? That would be Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that. What is the effect of having a smartphone and social media accounts on the mental health of teenagers? Oh, I left off the word health. One sec. Mental health of teenagers. Okay, so that is my final research question. That is the one that I'm going to have to research further to find an answer, as opposed to just going to Google. So that is one of our, that would be considered a strong research question, as opposed to a basic short answer research question. So this would be the one that now I'm going to go and do some more research to continue to learn about that topic.